Welcome to the Blue Chair Book Review. I'm Janalie Youngblood, and I am joined with my co-host, USA Today Bestselling Author, Janalie Youngblood. This is our first podcast of 2022, and we're really excited to have our first book of the new year be your book, One Perfect Day. So I'm going to give a little brief synopsis about the book.
Okay.
She wasn't looking for love, but one day with the right person might change everything. Piper Kell has zero time for love. She's determined to become a success by working long hours and putting up with the unreasonable demands of her diva boss. When a spontaneous meeting with knock your socks off handsome and charismatic Noah Romeo morphs into the perfect day, Piper soon realizes that her career is not enough. She wants more. This book actually takes place in Park City, Utah, which is a ski resort town. What made you decide to set the book there?
Park City is one of my favorite places to visit. I really like the quaint town, and I love how picturesque it is. And it's beautiful really any time of the year, because in the fall you have the beautiful leaves and then the snow, and so yeah.
It's just kind of like a mountain town up there.
It is.
So this book doesn't have any skiing in it, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And people often ask us, because they'll ask me and Patrick. They'll say, "Well, why don't you guys ski?" Because we're right here in the greatest snow in the world, pretty much. And I'm like, well, we didn't live here when we were young.
Yes,
and we really don't want to get injured.
Right.
So.
Piper Kell is an aspiring photographer who works in one of the galleries. What was your inspiration behind making her a photographer rather than an artist?
So Patrick, my husband, is a photographer, and whenever we go to the galleries at Park City, he spends lots of time looking at all the photographs.
Right.
And that was just fascinating to me, because I didn't realize until after being around him how much actually goes into creating these photographs. You just think, oh, anybody can take pictures. Well, I'm living proof that that's not true. I guess I should say anyone can take pictures, but only few can take them well.
Yes.
So,
anybody can snap and shoot, but that doesn't mean they're going to be good to look at later. Piper isn't happy with her working situation. Why not?
Well, she has this horrendous boss named Deidra, and Deidra is very unreasonable. At the beginning of the novel, Deidra has clearly made a mistake and messed up an order for one of the customers, and a normal person would like acknowledge that.
Right, admit they were wrong.
Yeah, but she doesn't, and she blames it all on Piper. And so Piper is really in a losing situation all the time.
Did you have any inspiration for your character of Deidra?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I did. I always kid people and say, be careful, you might end up in one of my books.
It's true.
But this one, the one that comes to mind, years ago when I was very young, I worked for a man, I'll call him Mr. H. And Mr. H he was a multi-millionaire, maybe even a billionaire for all I knew. But he had his company leased all of these commercial spots near an airport. And so that was the job. And I remember one time Mr. H asked me to write a welcome letter, because whenever tenants would move into these new spaces, we would welcome them. And so he and I talked about what he wanted to say. And so I went and composed it and then brought it back to him. And he looked at it and he read it and he just got so angry and his face turned red, and he took it and tore it in half and threw it in the garbage. And then about a few minutes later, he had to fish it out and tape it back together to show me the one word he wanted changed.
All that for one word.
For one word.
Oh, man.
So,
did you end up working a long time there?
I didn't. I lasted about 4 months, which was probably longer than most people would last. And I did end up telling him off and leaving.
If Piper was so frustrated, kind of like your experience, why does she stay with Deidra?
Well, she really, really wants to be a well-known photographer. She's got this burning desire to make it. And so Deidra has promised her some great things. She's promised her that this takes place right before Christmas, and she's promised Piper that the new year that she will hold a reception in her honor where she can showcase all of her work. And Deidra is really well known in the art world. And therefore, the photography art world, they're kind of, simultaneous. And so she knows that if her work is shown there, then it will have a very good chance of getting her discovered. So that's why she's willing to put up with all of that.
The title, One Perfect Day, is an interesting idea. How does this factor into the story?
Well, when I first started thinking about this, it's kind of interesting because sometimes stories come to me first and then I have to figure out a title. But for this one, I just kept having that title run through my head. And I wanted to write a story about one perfect day because we're always like, oh, can one day make a big difference in your life? And so I wanted to write that, and that's kind of where it started. And then when I first started writing it, I really just expected it to be a standalone title. And then, of course, it turned into the Romeo series.
Right. So she's in downtown Park City where all the shops are located, right?
Yes.
How does that, affect kind of the whole perfect day? Does she walk around the shops? Where does she end up on this perfect day?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, so she starts out, she doesn't intend to have this perfect day. Her day starts out really rotten, and she needs to clear her head. And her colleague, Scotty, he's an artist, and he's in the same situation that Piper's in. They both work for Deidra. They can't stand her, but she's promised him these great things. And so basically, Deidre's getting really talented people for a very low cost, and she's stringing them on. And so Scotty tells Piper, hey, go clear your head, take a lunch break. And so she does. And she walks up, and she's just, it's a sunny day. And, out west, it's even though there's snow on the ground, if the sun is shining, it can be a very pleasant day.
Yeah.
And so she's walking up, and she's kind of looking at all the wreaths on the doors, and it's really picturesque with all the snow and everything. And she sees shoppers with all their colorful bags and packages. And so she goes up, and she sees this bench. There's this little area in Park City that's by the ski lift. And she sees it, and she sees an open bench, so she goes towards it. And when she does, she gets pummeled by a snowball. But then her perfect day that she ends up spending, they end up going tubing, and then they end up going caroling, making Christmas cookies and going caroling.
So it doesn't just happen at the shops. It's kind of all over.
It's kind of all over, yes.
The snowball fight is where she first meets Noah, right?
Yes.
What was her reaction to getting hit by a few snowballs?
Well, at first she's furious because one hits her right in the face. And then when she's reeling from that one, she keeps getting pummeled. So, after the morning she's had, she kind of starts to vent, and she's really frustrated.
She's adding to an already bad day.
Yes.
What was her first reaction to seeing Noah?
Well, it startles her because she sees him, and of course he's really handsome, and she feels an instant attraction to him, and that bothers her. And so that's kind of how they start out.
So I'm going to actually read that encounter from your book, the encounter between Piper and the first time she meets Noah. She spotted an empty bench and was headed that direction when something cold hit her in the face. She gasped. Pain streaked across her cheek as her brain registered what was happening. She'd been pelted by a snowball. She jerked around in the direction it had come, only to get hit again, this time in the head. She gasped, shielding her face. More snowballs pinged her, one lodging in her mouth. She spit it out, sputtering. What the heck? A group of boys were throwing snowballs at her. Indignation swelled inside her. Seriously, she huffed. She glared at them, expecting them to be quelled by her wrath, but then realized their attention was fixed on something or someone behind her. She turned to see a tall, athletic guy wearing a charcoal gray coat and black beanie hat. A jolt shot through her. He was handsome in the rugged, not too pretty way she liked. He caught her eye with her, giving her a sheepish grin. He looked past her. Hey guys, he said as he held up his hands in a truce. You've caught someone in the crossfire. Not just someone, she countered. Me. She shot him an indignant glare. Good-looking or not, the man should be ashamed of himself for egging on these kids and getting innocent bystanders caught in the middle of their snowball fight. This was a public place, after all. More snowballs came hurling through the air like cold bullets. Some hit the guy, others hit Piper in the back of her head. "Watch out," she shouted. The guy laughed. "You could help." Piper's jaw went slack. "What?" The guy motioned at the group of boys who were bent over refueling their snowballs. "It's me against all of them. You could help." Piper grunted. The nerve of this guy. She straightened to her full height, giving him a withering look. "I don't think so," she muttered, about to continue walking. "Listen to the little sissy," one of the boys taunted, "asking a girl for help." The guy chuckled. "Did you hear that? Are you going to let them talk to you that way?" For an instant, Piper was floored. Her eyes connected with the guy as a sizzle of awareness traced through her. His adventurous expression called to her inner child, breaking up the last of the tension ball inside her that had formed earlier when Deidra went on her rampage. A grin stole over Piper's lips as she made a split-second decision. "No, I'm not." She bent over and began hastily making snowballs. So what happens next after that?
So after that, of course, they have the snowball fight, and then she realizes that the guys he was having the snowball fight with, that one of them is his nephew. And so he gives him some money and tells him to go get some ice cream. And so they kind of trot off, and then the two of them talk, and then they get ice cream, and then they really get along well. Like it's one of those just magical moments where everything just clicks. And then he asks her if she will spend the rest of the day with him. And of course, here she is at work.
Right.
And she's a workaholic. And so, ditching work would be the last thing that she would ever do.
Yeah.
However, Deidra has left because she was all nervous because Nolan Vant, this photographer, he's basically the superstar photographer of the gallery, and so they showcase all of his work, and he's also Deidra's boyfriend. But he's very elusive, and they've only seen Piper's only seen a few pictures of him. He doesn't like the limelight at all, but he's making an exception and letting them do a reception for his work. And so Deidra's gone to the airport to pick him up.
Oh, okay.
And so with her being gone, and she's told Piper before she left that she won't be back the rest of the day. And so Piper goes back and talks to Scotty, and Scotty agrees to hold down the fort so that she can do that. So that she can go.
Noah is actually a Romeo. He is one of the characters in your Romeo family romance series.
Yes.
So he ends up taking Piper to meet his older sister, Zoe, who also lives in Park City. And he is currently living in Colorado, but came to Park City, like you said, for a visit. The Romeo family romance series, though, takes place in Franklin, Tennessee. How did you get from Utah to Tennessee?
So Noah's living in Colorado, and then Zoe ended up in Utah because she got married to her husband, Carl. And so she has a house in Park City, and it's a super, super nice house. And she's worried about the cost because, anything in Park City is expensive. And they not only have a home, but they have a mansion. And it sits up in the neighborhood really prominently and overlooks the city. And she's just worried. She's concerned because Carl, her husband, he's a coach for realtors. And she's concerned because she senses that his business is floundering a little bit. And she's come from money. Her family is very wealthy. But yet Carl resents any type of intrusion, So she tries to keep her family's finances and their personal finances separate. And but she's a little concerned that things are not quite right.
When did you decide to make One Perfect Day part of the Romeo family romance series?
It was when I started writing Zoe. I really felt a connection with her. Like I said, she's a mom. She's got Milo. She's got Milo and Maddie, are her two children. And she's always she really wants to be a good mom. She wants to be a good wife. And so she's kind of put her own hopes and dreams on hold. And she does all that, she's the great mom. She bakes the cookies. She makes the dinners. She volunteers at the school. She runs the carpool. And so I think it was that, because when my boys were little, I did a lot of that too. Like I spent, practically lived at the school.
Right.
And I'm grateful that I had that time. But I really felt a kinship with her in that regard.
You actually tell her story in your second book of the series, One Way Home, right?
Yes, I sure do.
Going back to Piper and Noah, they share this perfect magical day together, and then what happens?
Well, Piper is just floating on air. I mean, she's smitten. And she can't believe that a day could have turned out so awful, and then she could have met this wonderful guy, and they just clicked. And she met Zoe, really connected with his sister, the kids. I mean, they've had this amazing time together.
The perfect day.
The perfect day. Yeah. They've had the absolute perfect day. And then she's told him where she works. And so the next day she's working at the gallery, and then lo and behold, she's in the back, and it's kind of an open gallery. So she's in the back, but she can see, what's going on. And so she's in the back helping, if I remember correctly, I think they were like packaging up some things to ship out, some art to ship out, she and Scotty. And she looks and she sees Noah walk in, and her heart just leaps because she sees him, and she knows he's there to see her. And before she can even say anything, Deidra runs out and gives him this big kiss.
Oh, no.
And then Piper's world just implodes.
Right.
Because she puts it two and two together and realizes, spoiler alert, but she realizes that Noah is actually Nolan Vant, Deidre's boyfriend.
Yeah, that would be quite the shock, especially with how terrible Deidra is to
and
her.
She's seen pictures of Nolan Vant, but she's really never seen his face, and he had this like really bushy beard and long stringy hair, so he looked nothing like Noah.
Right.
And so she's devastated.
Yeah, I imagine. This book is actually an audiobook currently. Where could people find this audiobook if they wanted to listen to it?
Well, I'm really, really excited because I have some great news. This has been available on Audible, iTunes, for a long time.
Yeah.
But now it's available on YouTube, so people can watch it absolutely free. The only thing that would really help me is if people would subscribe to my channel, and that way I can keep putting up audiobooks for free.
Right. So all they have to do is subscribe to this channel, and you'll have the audiobooks, so they can get all of their Jennifer Youngblood content in one place.
That's exactly right.
How was it to hear your own writing as an audiobook?
It was kind of surreal. It really made the story come to life. I mean, when I read it, I feel like I'm there, but hearing it was just a whole new experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It was amazing.
I noticed that you have a different narrator for most of the other books in this series. Who is the narrator of this book, and how did you kind of come to get a new one later in the series?
So the one who did this one is Majel Connor, and when I first heard Majel's voice, I just knew she was perfect. And so I was able to get her to do One Perfect Day, and then I ended up getting her to do False Identity, and she just knocked those out of the park. She also did One Tiny Lie in this series, and it was wonderful. I mean, Majel is just a class act. It was amazing working with her. And so it was fun to have her. And then also at the same time, I started working with another narrator. Her name is Lisa Baldini. And Lisa has a thick Southern accent.
Yeah.
And it was kind of neat because the two books that really don't take place in the South, I was able to get Majel to do. And then the rest of them, I got Lisa to do because Lisa's accent, I know I have an accent, but she basically sounds like me.
Yeah.
And so it was fun hearing that and hearing someone who is Southern to be able to narrate it.
Right. So. Just to come to life a little bit. She narrates Zoe's story, which is the next book in this series, right?
Which is the next book. So yes, and Zoe, it's funny because Piper, when Piper first meets Noah, she remarks about his Southern accent. And then also, there's Zoe.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting because if you're from the South and everybody's speaking Southern, then it's
Right.
just how everybody talks,
Yeah.
right? So you don't think about it. But then it's kind of fun also to talk about the accents when they go different places and you have that. So it's fun to write it from Piper's perspective, who would definitely think, oh, wow, they have a thick accent.
She'd pick up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Blue Chair Book Review. You can subscribe on any of your favorite podcast apps. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Jennifer's channel. We can't wait to share more books with you.
Thanks for joining us.